This question came in from Josh. I think this is interesting. So, Karl, in your session earlier this morning, you mentioned the cost of hiring and developing new staff as being a really good reason, right, to like kind of sit down and take a hard look at your recruiting strategies and the way that your team is structured to make sure that you're kind of preventing that churn at any step. And so, do you have have you actually do you have any cost figures around that? Like, what is the cost of churn at an organization? I'm really curious, like what it takes to get someone in the door and ready to go in a new job to be successful.
I think I mentioned, about the level of churn that are in the industry, and I think that's a really scary figure. I think I said to you like the average tenure in, let's use incident response, where there's high burnout and high churn right now is collapsed between under the 18-month mark. So that means you've got a limited product life cycle that you're going to have with these people before they're going to want to look elsewhere unless you can do something differently. So I think that's the first thing. I think secondly, when it comes to costing, is there's a lot of different initiatives that you can do. You can do anything from depth charts and making sure that if someone leaves, you have someone ready to go and under, i.e. internally or identified externally. Or secondly, you can do, you can already have these talent pools being built by your talent acquisition team to make sure there's already someone in, and that's going to save you time. And time at the end of the day is money, especially for if you're revenue generating or if you're a cost center, depending on how you're seen in the business internally. But I think you do have to be wary of how these costs sit, because if you think about it, you've got that first 3 months in the business where there's a chance that person is going to be using your time as a hiring manager, but also time taken away from others, and that's really critical. So if you've got to spend a lot of time with this person, that is costing you money. And if there's a cost then to utilizing other people's time, or there's cost of using agencies or whatever it is, that starts to mount up. So it does change per position. On average, we're seeing it costing anywhere between sort of $6,000 to $16,000 per replacement right now, but there's potential of that scaling depending on the size of the firm and size of the position.
So I have something I'd add on if you don't mind. So
Yeah, please do.
this doesn't deal with the costing piece of it, but when you start talking about churn, one of the ways to reduce costs, as Karl mentioned, is to keep your resources internal and have a pipeline built. So one of the things that we're starting to discover as we analyze our workforce using a common taxonomy approach is where their skill sets are. And because you can leverage that approach across multiple different functions within an organization, once you have those skill profiles built by your employees and you have the expectations of the role defined so that you can look for where their strengths are, where they're at normal, where their baseline is, and where their areas of opportunity are, you can apply that for mobility options as well, so that employee can look at any other role that has those performance expectation sets and see how their skill profile levels them for another career. So instead of those people in a high turnover role leaving the company, maybe they can find where their skill sets are better suited in a job that speaks to what they want from a work-life balance perspective. And that in and of itself will reduce costs because they're already familiar with the company, how you behave, the policies, they've gone through the fundamental training. And you're empowering them to take control over their own career and explore the options that your company has at the ready.
What about the other way around, Leo? Like if you're sort of taking an inventory of all the talents at your organization, can you also apply that approach to fill open cybersecurity roles from people that already are maybe working at your organization?
You could, in theory, if you hire based on the same methodology that you assess against. So if it's apples to apples, you could do it internally or externally. You could have somebody come against your role profile. You could look at their skill set. You could collect their data, even though it would probably be kind of a binary effect. And you could put them against a role that they're interested in and see how they are. Now, here's the other benefit. I'm sure most of us have interviewed for jobs before. You get a job interview and it doesn't go well, and they give you the sorry, you don't meet what we're looking for. Well, what if that note was then changed saying, sorry, we don't think you're a fit for this job, but we've applied your skill profile. We think we would like you to apply for these 4 jobs. Why don't you go and check those out? If you did that internally or externally, your candidate pool is going to be much more interested in you as a company because you're giving them something that relates back to their profile so they can see themselves working at you maybe in a different capacity. So I agree with you. We're not there yet, but it is an approach that you could take.
Also, presumably, if you take that same approach, you could, if you're doing an assessment of their skills, you could identify the skills that maybe they're lacking. And then if you've already got that kind of training and pathway model set up, you could say, hey, we could put you into this role, but we already know you're going to need to take this training right off the bat to get upskilled into it.
New episodes of Cyberwork are available every Monday at 1 p.m. Central. And don't forget to claim your free month of Infosec skills. Sign up using the code CYBERWORK and you'll get unlimited access to hundreds of courses, hands-on labs, certification practice exams, skills assessments, and more. Use code CYBERWORK for Infosec skills.